This is the second video in our Unit 4 series focusing on the technological innovations that allowed for the creation of the transoceanic interconnections from 1450 to 1750. And so, where we are right now is that we know that after 1450, nation states emerged in Europe. And these nation states struggled to get the needed wealth to not only make their population happy, but also to run their governments. They were suffering from the gold famine, not only because of the high prices charged by the Muslim merchants, but also because they just don't have anything to trade. And so, in order to avoid the Muslims and to find new things to trade that would bring in the needed gold, they turned to maritime exploration. So, what we want to know through this video and in this topic, how did the technology develop to be able to do this? And how did this overall lead to changes in trade and travel? So, our essential question, which you need to take notes to answer, and what you need to be able to answer to study for this test, is essentially explain how cross cultural interactions resulted in the diffusion of technology and facilitated changes in the patterns of trade and travel from 1450 to 1750. So, going into a little bit more detail, this uses the theme, the piece of innovation. And when we work with the piece of innovation, what we're basically looking at is how humans have adapted and created innovations that have resulted in increased efficiency, comfort, and security, and how these advances have not only shaped development, but also have intended and unintended consequences. So when we apply these ideas to our essential question, explain how cross cultural interactions resulted in the diffusion of technology and facilitated changes in the patterns of trade from 1450 to 1750. The very first thing is we need to be able to know what was the technology. What was the technology that allowed them to create these transoceanic interconnections? Secondly, we need to understand that some of the technology diffused from the Indian Ocean system while other technologies were developed by the Europeans themselves. And throughout the course of this, we need to make sure that we understand how it changed the patterns of trade and travel. So, our thesis starts off like this: cross cultural interactions allowed for the diffusion of maritime technology to Western Europe. This led to nation states sponsoring advances in shipbuilding and navigation used for maritime exploration that shifted trade and travel to maritime routes that connected the Eastern and the Western hemispheres. So, as we get in a little bit deeper into this, what we're trying to do is we're trying to sail across scenes like this. How can we sail without the sight of land across oceans for months and get to where we go efficiently and safely? Well, we need certain technologies that are going to help us not only travel safely, but also carry the amount of luxury goods or commodities that we need to be successful, as well as navigation ideas to be able to get to where we need to go. So, this begins with the technology that diffused from the Indian Ocean system. The Indian Ocean system, as you know, was a very big trade route between India, Southeast Asia, China, and Sub Saharan Africa that used not only knowledge of the monsoon winds, but technologies such as the dhow boat using the lateen sail, the junk boat using the stern mounted rudder, the astrolabe, the magnetic compass, and early astronomical charts to be able to navigate. So when we go a little bit deeper, the dhow boat was the first big innovation because it allowed boats to be able to sail somewhat against the wind. As you can see by this diagram, A ship with a lateen or triangular sail basically uses a zigzag pattern in which the triangular wind catches it, pushing the boat. This was a big advancement and began to allow boats to sail outside of the sight of land. When we look at what China contributed, well, they contributed the junk boat. As you can see, the gigantic jump boat compared to Columbus's Santa Maria in black in front essentially was huge, could carry large amounts of cargo, was very durable, but it also had a stern mounted rudder, a rudder in the back that could easily steer the boat through the various channels and along the coast into harbors. So all this technology was used by Islamic and Chinese merchants through the Indian Ocean system. And eventually it's going to diffuse into the Mediterranean Sea, being brought by Arab merchants. So lateen sails, stern-mounted rudders, astrolabes, and magnetic compasses, along with very crude astronomical charts, were used and brought all the way into the Mediterranean Sea by Islamic merchants. They were used mostly by the Islamic civilization of Al-Andalus, which was an Islamic state on the Iberian Peninsula in Europe. While Europe was in the Middle Ages, these merchants practiced great maritime trade, eventually going down parts of the African coast. But it's here that the Europeans learned about all this technology. Well, what happens is we have the rise of two new nation states, Portugal and Spain. And Portugal and Spain kicks out Al-Andalus and essentially, though, adopts our technology. So Portugal begins this. A gentleman by the name of Prince Henry the Navigator creates Sagres, a school for navigation, not just to train sailors, but to bring together the best sail riggers, boat builders, map makers, and navigators to kind of be in one and to perfect it. This is actually a picture of where Sagres it was today. So throughout this, they took the technology that diffused and created new technology. Their first big thing was 3 new ships. We have the Caravel, which was suited toward exploration because it had a very shallow draft, using lateen sails, and could not only sail close to the coast, but also up rivers, further exploring. Then we have the Carrack, the ship on the top right. The Carrack was a much bigger ship that could carry the needed supplies and the materials to be able to make those worth it. Then later the Dutch made the Flute. These 3 boats essentially made exploration safe and efficient, bringing in commodities as well as gold and silver into Europe, fulfilling their economic goals. Navigation wise, the Europeans made better astrolabes, better maps, created portolan charts, created the sextant, and perfected the mariner's compass to make navigation more accurate and easier. They also learned what's known as volta do mar. Everywhere in the world, we have a system of winds and currents that go around in a gigantic circle. That a sailor could use these winds to their advantage to be able to get where they needed to go. This created the transoceanic interconnections, the networks of exchange that existed not only between Europe, Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, but also Europe and the New World. These brought great wealth and were caused by technologies. So when you talk about the big changes, 1, trade became almost exclusively maritime, mostly because it was cheaper and it was safer. Secondly, states who lived along the shores, such as the Mughals, the Ming and the Qing Chinese, the Japanese, and certain states in Africa, rose to power as they traded with the Europeans. And thirdly, the Americas were brought into world trade. So, key takeaways: technology is always developed by humans and diffuses. Humans seek to make this technology more efficient using the pattern of technological development, meaning that they take old technology and they make it better. That early maritime technology diffused from the Indian Ocean system to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea and Al-Andalus, and nation state rulers took this technology and made it better, leading to the transition to maritime trade and the growth of both land and maritime empires.